Welcome to episode 163 of Girl Take the Lead, where each week we explore womanhood and leadership. And I'm your host, Yo Canny. One of the wonderful things about podcasting is the amazing people you meet. And one of those is Nicole Trick Steinbach, who returns to our show. And you may remember her from episode 113, titled Dare to be Brave, Conquer Failure, and Learn Bravery as a Skill. You might also remember she has a very successful podcast, Build Your Brave Career. Today, Nicole and I are discussing the book, Quit, The Power of Knowing When to Walk Away by Annie Duke. Annie Duke is a former professional poker player who earned more than $4 million in tournament poker before retiring in 2021. And boy, did Nicole and I have fun diving in, finding our own insights, and then discussing them together. So much so, we ended up talking and talking. And rather than cut our discussion, I've broken the conversation into two parts. And this is part one, where we'll cover quit versus grit and what's valued, defining success for ourselves, intersectional identity and staying too long, Nicole's time to leave scale, risk and expected value, whispers, missals, and bricks. And lastly, at the moment manager. Enjoy the listen. Here you go. Oh, Nicole, welcome back to Girl Take the Lead, man. You are such a girl taking the lead. And I'm so excited to do this episode with you. And welcome back.
Thank you. I'm stoked. I got to come back. That's like super exciting, right? It's like dance at people's weddings and get invited back. Very exciting.
That's great. Well, you had talked about this book in one of your newsletters, and everybody, you should sign up for her newsletter and get on board with that. And you talked about this book and how impactful it was for you. And I went, oh my God, I got to get the book and I got to read it. And then, reached out to you and say, hey, would you want to do an episode on it? And you go, oh my God, you won't be able to shut me up. So
at this moment, I always like to remind us that our dearly beloved Desmond Tutu also said, I will not shut up. So I'm walking, beyond footprints that,
right.
are hallowed.
And we could put in Madeline Albright in there too.
Oh, yes.
She said that pretty well as well. Okay, everybody. So let's start first, though, by telling the listeners who didn't hear our episode with you. I think that was like, I don't know, 113. I'll have it in the show notes, though, so everyone can listen to it if you want to, because Nicole has wonderful things to say about being brave and courageous. But, let's hear from her first.
Yeah. Okay. So I am a woman in tech. I coach women in technology. I'm also a mother. I'm a former immigrant. I lived in Germany for 13 years, and I'm a big reader and a big traveler. So work sent me to over 25 countries while I was living in Germany and in the United States. And then I have traveled to a good number more than that out of joy. And one of my joys in life is eating food I don't know, described in a language I can't speak. And that is an example of bravery, right? Because I didn't grow up with that. And so there are a few things that I argue are very, very true. And I argue them sometimes in talking, but also just in how I live my life. Mm-hmm. Bravery is a skill, not a personality trait. I am not naturally brave. I would skip a lot of things except for I have goals, I have desires, I want to move towards things. And that starts with clarity. That's the first part of bravery as a skill because you can build it. That's the second truth. And the first part is clarity. And then the second part is momentum. And for my women in tech, women in STEM out there, which I think you have a lot of those listeners,
I hope so.
Momentum includes feelings. So you got to feel
Mhm.
your feels and take your actions. And then the third part is accountability, which is to yourself. It's not
Mm.
governance or control, it's to yourself. Who do you want to be and how do you want to become her? And so I wanted to be the person who came back on this podcast. So here we are.
Well, tell our listeners about your podcast, though, before we get into this,
Oh,
so they
right.
can find
Yes.
you.
Yeah, so my podcast is, I just rebranded a couple of months ago. It's Build Your Brave Career.
Mhm.
And that was also a really brave move because it originally had a different name called Celebrate Brave, which was my best intention, which is getting us already into the book Quit. Um, and it was effective for a little while, but I asked my listeners and my community, for feedback, specific, general, helpful, supportive, whatever, critical, encouraging. And it just kept coming back with, your name doesn't really reflect what you're doing. And what I'm
Mm.
doing is I'm hosting women in tech, in the industry of tech. So that's everything from sales all the way to customer support to share their brave career stories. These are unique, these are personal, so that the loneliness we as a group, as a community, women in tech continue to report, that we can break that down. We can realize that bravery and success are uniquely defined. It's no longer about a gold watch after 50 years.
Mhm.
It's about fulfilling less stress, right?
Mhm.
Creating a legacy you enjoy, building relationships that matter to you, getting onto amazing podcasts, like stuff like that, right? So, and then
Yeah.
in between, I share my insights from my clients or from my own experience, from interesting trends that are happening in our industry, around our industry. And spoiler alert, all industries are tech industries. But, anyways, moving on. So, come join.
Yeah. Oh, really? And I'll have, um, I was also a guest on her show and was
Yes.
just so honored to be there. So I'll have a link to that so you can listen to us laugh a lot because we did laugh a
We
lot.
laughed a lot.
And we kind of feed off of each other's energy that
Mhm.
way, which is so good. So, okay. So this book is called, and I'll have, of course, a link to it, Quit, The Power of Knowing When to Walk Away. And it's by Annie Duke. And gosh, there's some great people on the cover. Seth Gordon. It's just like a few people who have given it a thumbs up. I one of the most interesting things to me was who Annie Duke was.
Yes. Hmm.
Huh? Right? She won like over $4 million playing poker.
Poker. As like a grad student, right?
It was like, and one of the testimonials I said something like, well, who else could write a book like this other than a poker player
Yeah.
in terms of when to walk away, right? When to fold them and when to walk away.
Yeah. When to hold them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think from probably our different lenses,
Hmm.
I'm sure Nicole is looking at it through the lens of career.
Yes.
And so we'll kind of talk a little bit about that. But I also thought the book was kind of about almost anything. It could be about
Yeah.
relationships, it could be about
Hmm.
anything that you are taking on when you have to make the decision, right? To either
Yes.
leave or stay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the process could be kind of the same no matter what we go into.
What really blew me away is really early. She talks about Lindsey Vonn, who for everyone was a top Olympian
Mm-hmm.
and finally was all but forced to, by her body, that
Mm-hmm.
she had to quit. This is at the very beginning, in
Mm-hmm.
the prologue, even. And in the post that Lindsey Vonn shares, she actually says, I'm going to read it. My body is broken beyond repair, and it isn't letting me have the final season I dreamed of. My body is screaming at me to stop, and it is time for me to listen. And then later on says, I always say, never give up. So, to all the kids out there, to my fans who have sent me messages of encouragement to keep going, I need to tell you that I am not giving up. I am
Mm-hmm.
starting a new chapter. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, so Lindsay and Nicole Trick Steinbach have a lot in common.
And Yolanda Canning too, because of the warrior nature of my background, and I think that's one of the great things she brings up, right? That
Yes.
we look at the one that quits as almost cowardly, and the person who actually, um, has the grit and sticks to it as the hero. But it was so interesting, right? She helped us see that they're sides of the same coin.
See, it's so interesting. So this is why I thought, oh my gosh, having this conversation with you would be amazing because my take on that is so different.
Okay.
Because there's this for a long time, I would say like, oh, I got this other, I'm leaving this thing to go towards this other thing,
Mhm.
and I'm going to spin it. There's going to be a spin in that thing and then that other thing. I'm going to create like essentially a marketing, even though I'm not marketing, but like a message
Mhm.
of a an arc. And then she helps me realize later in the book, particularly around the men who aren't famous because they survived the Everest
Yes.
tragedy, where many of their colleagues did not turn around, they did not quit, they did
Mhm.
not follow choosing themselves and the boundaries that they had set. So they're
Yeah.
still alive and they're not famous
Mhm.
because they chose themselves. And I realized, oh, I don't need to make a marketing message or communication message for my pivots, for my quitting and trying something else, for my pilots, failed or successful, because I run a business. My goodness, have
Mhm.
I had a lot of failure, right? I just have to keep coming back to choosing myself, or in my business, choosing the people I love enough to do all of the nonsense of business for, or choosing the type of parent that I want to be. So I can keep quitting things
Right.
and stay on an arc because I keep with grit and intention and humility and a lot of tears and even more bravery, choosing myself.
Yes. Well, I think you're also saying something she would probably nod her head to, which is defining what you mean by success,
Oh, yes.
right? Because the example of the Everest climbers is that some saw success as going all the way to the top, and that grit and determination sometimes cost them their lives because they
Yeah.
went all the way to the top.
Yeah.
Where others saw success as returning to base camp alive, which,
Yes.
which I
Yeah.
probably would have been in that camp.
Yes.
But they defined success and failure differently.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
I think that gives us great freedom
Yeah.
to define the success of something. So, you know, maybe you can help me with this one. I had a little trouble when she would say, you stay longer than you should at something, that you should quit
Mm. Mm-hmm.
before you get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's an assessment to me. That's like saying, because at the same time, she'll say that uncertainty, whenever we have to make a decision, there's uncertainty, and we never know 100% if it's going to go one way or another. So, how
Yeah.
can you really know that you're staying too long?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So, dear listeners, I have read this book 5 times. Okay. So I'm diving in. I got the quote. Here we go. Again, in the prologue, because one of the masterful things that Annie Duke does is she tells you her theory. She
Yeah.
tells you the way forward. And then she brings in personal stories, anecdotes, and actual data research, plus her personal story. So
Yes.
she tells you at the beginning, and then she goes significantly deeper in each of the chapters. So at the very beginning, she's talking about how the scale is gafted towards grit, and the
Hmm.
way we admire people who persist as heroes.
Right.
In the book, she goes even to like Greek mythology and things like that. But then she says, but anyone who reads the book Grit, right, which is all about sticking it out, as suggesting that perseverance, absent context, is always a virtue, is misinterpreting Angela Duckworth's, the author's, work.
Hmm.
She would never say, just stick with things and you'll succeed. And yet, when we look at a lot of these ice bath bros, 4 a.m. bros, what is it? Just be consistent. Just be
Mhm.
consistent. Just be consistent. And frequently that is not, you only know what you know.
Right.
And
In
you
that
only
moment. In
that's
that
right.
moment.
That's right. And so when it comes to sticking it out too long, first of all, I strongly feel that the more intersectional your identity is, the more that indoctrination has been given to you.
Mhm.
So I hear this more from, for example, the person who helped me see this the most was a client of mine who is a Black lesbian first generation American who was living in Germany. So there was a lot of intersectional and just the intensity in which the indoctrination had taken place was wild to me. And since quote unquote you don't belong, so you have to stay and be consistent, right? Leads, especially people like for me, I'm a white woman. I was an immigrant for 13 years. I built my career in Germany. For me to keep looking at myself and questioning, and then what can I do? I can persevere versus looking inside of myself and outside of myself and saying, you know what? Actually, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. For example, you've hired me because I'm an English native speaker, because I have expertise in change management, because I've worked globally, because, and then you won't listen to a thing I say. Thank you so much for this contract. Let's have a crucial conversation. Let's have another one. I really wish you all the best. Goodbye. But I had to learn to, and this is what I help some of my clients with as well. I have two clients right now who have just taken this grit concept. They're both in startups to just an insane, I mean, just wildly extreme status on a scale of 1 to 10. Are you getting what you want? Do you belong here? Do you feel you belong here? Are you learning? Are you growing? Like we create, I have a standard metrics, but we create it for them. And if it's below a 7 on average, it's you got to go. You got to go. But where do most of us start choosing to leave? Research tells us it's in between 2 and 3,
Wow. That's really interesting.
right?
We choose it. We start seeing it around 2 and 3, but you're
No,
hearing,
we start. So if 10 is like I'm getting everything,
oh, okay, the other direction.
right?
I see.
7 is when it's like, oh, I don't actually belong here. Oh, I got passed over for a promotion. Oh, he doesn't text me back. Oh, I don't feel safe walking in my neighborhood for whatever reason, right? Oh, whatever. I feel ignored when I'm out with my friends. But when people actually, according to research, when women actually begin the process of quitting that which is hurting them, they're around a 2 or 3. But where you need to leave to reduce your self harm, to increase your income, to increase your life satisfaction, and honestly, like longevity of life is something for a lot of women, is around the
Mm.
7, 8.
I think I can see myself as a 2 or a 3.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
And but the other thing that kind of got me is like she talks about calculating your expected value. Like, right, what like you have a scale of 1 to
Yeah.
7, but someone else could look at it. I think an example she gave in the book was, how do you see yourself in 1 year in that position? Do you see yourself as happy or unhappy?
Yeah.
And if you say with 100% conviction that you're going to be unhappy where you are a year from now, that is totally time to leave.
Yeah.
But as I read that, I had these moments. I went back and looked at my own history. Like I had 11 jobs. I left 4 of them under, I would say, forced
Mm-hmm.
situations. Um, 3 of them were situations where there was change happening in the company, like big change, like changes in leadership, changes in
Yeah.
the, and I had to choose, do I stick it out or do I decide to leave, right?
Oh, can I want to hear
Yes,
your
jump
story. And
in.
can I jump in here? This is where I think self-concept work is so important and where it became even more important for me reading her book, which is because I was also taught that, do I stay or do I leave? And I want us to think about this with grit and quitting on the same, right? Different sides of the coin. Who do I think I will become in 1 year when I stay here? Who do I think I will become in 1 year if I leave? Who do I think I will become if I don't make a decision at all? Because I would have made some very different decisions if I had taken the moment to to explore who do I think that I'll become when I'm working for a boss who is sexually harassing me consistently. So, like, I just
Right.
but I that's one of the things that for
That's a
me, this
great,
book,
that's a much
amazing.
stronger way, I think, to ask about that when you're looking at the expected value of what you're going to get in a year from
Yeah.
where you are. That's a really strong way of looking at that, Nicole. That's terrific.
But you and I were not taught that. So please continue your
Yeah,
story
no,
because I want to hear this because you
well,
had
I
a
think I think what also comes into account, which I didn't get from the book as much as I would have liked to, is the situations in which you're in. Um, my husband and I were taking our walk last night, and I was telling him about the book and how we were going to talk about it. And I said, three of the four positions I left, I netted out very well financially by staying just a little bit longer and going through the emotional hardship and the pain
yeah,
of being severed. Like here's your
severance package. Yeah.
yeah, right, and get my check and leave.
Yeah.
Um, and I know a lot of women who are who have been in that situation too, especially in leadership positions where you realize the political climate has changed
Yeah.
and you're no longer in a position of power, and they want to get rid of you, and you can leave on your own, no problem. But if you stay, they will sever you and give you a financial reward for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's got to play a role into that expected value of how much you're willing to give. It's like, how much are you going to get potentially a year's salary? Maybe sometimes more. Um, that the other big thing too is we stay longer for the safety and the consistent paycheck that we need sometimes to make our families happen. The risk is too great. And I don't know. Do you think that's like, what do you think about that? That hit me because I didn't feel that in the book. Like not everybody can just quit and move on in
Yeah.
the moment. I don't know. Maybe they
Yeah.
can.
So one of the things I love about the conversations that you have is that in the rare situation when one of your guests is black and white, it stands out. You have nuanced, mature conversation because we are all having unique experiences. I
Mm,
grew up very poor. My
mhm.
mom put up with a lot of stuff because she had to put food on our table.
Yeah.
Should I really look down on someone for that?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. This concept of, black, white, like if you're at a 6, then you have to leave. Sir, because
Yeah.
it's usually a sir, sir. I have bills to pay. I have two neurodiverse children. I have the desire to go to Thailand.
Hmm.
So I'm going to figure out how to do this with less stress, with less overwork, and acknowledging, hey, I'm making a trade off because it's all a trade off. And that's what I think her book calls out.
Uh,
It's always a trade off, which then brings us to Martin Luther King Jr., who was actually quoting, we take the consequence of civil disobedience. Now, does that give the police, we see this now in the universities, right? Does
Mhm.
that give the police or anyone else the quote unquote right to abuse, to use their sticks to harm, to shoot into? No, absolutely not. Right.
Mhm.
And when we are practicing quitting or staying, when we are practicing policy creation, when we are practicing civil disobedience, whatever, we are making trade offs.
Yes. And maybe what you're helping us see too is that when we're clear on why we're there and that trade-off of I'm willing to put up with this longer.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do this until I can find something else, or I'm willing to see how this unfolds.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you have more knowledge. You have perhaps a bit more information that can help you decide where what you do in that moment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I just got to say though, I will be the first one to say I had a brick thrown in the back of my head several times that
Yeah.
it was like, yo, wake up. You are not listening to all the other signs that
Yes.
I have been
Yes.
given. Like it was
Yes.
like, nope, you didn't listen to that one. You didn't listen to this one. You didn't. Oh,
Yes.
finally, yo,
Yes.
finally, you
Yes.
see it. But it's almost like that commitment. She calls it, what does she call it? She calls it the
Escalating
escalation of,
commitment.
yeah,
Got it
escalation,
open.
escalation of commitment,
Yeah.
right? Is what she calls it. And I mean, I have been there. I can totally see
Yes.
that. I even dug in deeper. It was almost,
Someone said to me years and years, because I did the same thing. And I felt like I got like pierced through the heart. I
mhm.
felt like I was standing, looking at an old castle up on the hill that I wanted to achieve. And I was working so hard to get to. And some person came out with a longbow and was like, and got me through the heart. So I feel that as well. And someone told me because of a specific situation, first, they'll call to you your inner voice, the signs, the universe, God, whatever. Will call to you from outside, hey, and then we'll tap on your door and then ring your bell and then pound on your door and then send missiles through the door.
I know.
And if you still hide somewhere else within your house, your heart, we'll set that thing on fire. But you will not be staying here.
I know. It's so true. I hope our listeners can relate to that because oh my gosh, I certainly
Yeah.
can. And I think I would definitely say every time I moved on
Yeah.
to the next thing, it was so much better
Yeah.
than where I had been.
Yeah.
The fear that comes up, that emotion of fear of the unknown, is I think what paralyzes us a lot. And she talks a lot about that too in the
Yes, she
book. Is
does.
I think we go into new jobs thinking like, oh, this is gonna be the best, right? We're on pink
Yeah.
clouds.
Yes.
And then stuff
Yes.
happens.
One of my clients just gave me a phrase recently, and I know that I'll be doing a lot of things around it. This is the first time I'm saying it publicly. She was describing her growth plan in this new role that she has. And she said, yeah, my at the moment manager said, and I was like, well, one moment, please. Can we repeat that? Where's that coming from? And she had gone through, I'm pretty sure she had either listened to part of this book or listened to a podcast
Mhm.
episode with Annie Duke, or just was familiar with it anyways, as someone who's deep in data and things like that, which is this this idea that there's a study where, and it's on page 91 for anyone following along, It's called the sunk cost problem.
Oh my
So we
God.
have the sunk cost fallacy, but this is a problem. This is like a slightly different thing. And it's actually from 1979, in case anyone's like, why did I not learn about this in elementary school? Because that's where I sat with that. But essentially, you have a gambling thing and you're flipping a coin. So generally speaking, it's about a 50-50, right? They could win 100 or they could lose 120.
Mhm.
And then breaks down how the majority made decisions, what information's influenced them, and do I flip again, but I lose this pretend money? Or do I win and gain less pretend money? And when does it switch?
Yeah.
If the pretend win money is higher than the pretend lose money, how does the behavior and the decision making shift? And it is astounding.
Mhm.
I tried to do it with my kids, but they didn't play along. It's fine. I'm raising them to be strong, independent
Darn kids.
humans, so it's fine. They should be strong and independent with everyone but me, right? It's just amazing
Mhm.
how tiny little shifts in how people talk to us, how we talk to ourselves, how we label things, how we engage, what the number is, etc., can shift how we behave because
Mm.
my at the moment manager is supporting me. But that manager may leave, or that manager just may get new information and is a different at the moment manager than they were 6 months ago. But
Gosh,
this is
that's brilliant, isn't it?
like
That's just brilliant to see
clients
it
are
that
like
way.
amazing. The clients are amazing. And
God,
she tried to claim that I came up with that. Dear listeners, not true.
that that is really a great way to look at it because that
Yeah,
just tells you constantly too that the future is uncertain and you
yes,
can't control it and you don't know where it's going to go. So
that's
go
right.
with the flow.
That's
And
right.
thank you for listening today. And we sure hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, would you please leave a comment wherever you listen to your podcast? Tell a friend about us. Join our public Facebook group, Girl Take the Lead, or visit our website, girltaketheleadpod.com. We also have a YouTube channel where your subscription would be appreciated. Once you're on YouTube, search at Girl Take the Lead. And we've joined YouTube Music, where you can see the video version of this episode. Here are the 3 takeaways from this series. 1, in our culture, we see grit as a virtue and quit as a vice. Per Annie Duke, success does not lie in sticking to things. It lies in picking the right thing to stick to and quitting the rest. 2, any decision is made under some degree of uncertainty. We don't have a crystal ball, and new information will always reveal itself. And 3, external validation increases the escalation of commitment. Fear of how others will view us if we quit something is usually overblown. Our next episode will conclude our conversation with Nicole and where we'll cover goals and expected outcomes, stressing less, and avoiding the Sunday scary, a quit coach, and 4 steps to quit conversations with them, kill criteria to cut your losses, attachment to our own self identity, and where we might be in love with our own self importance, battles worth having. And we'll end the episode with the famous ant story. So make sure to listen to part 2. It's all juicy stuff. And please join us again. We all have things we have to quit or leave, and it can be so difficult. And we hope our conversation helps you along in some of those decisions. Thanks for being here and talk to you soon. Bye.